Peace, everybody.
All
I
right, peace, brother
am
Tony.
yes, I'm Tony Lindsay, and I told you guys that we were gonna do a live this evening, and I brought some brothers on here to discuss the recent passing of Kevin Samuels. I'm expecting a couple more people to come in while the brothers share the video. Uh, yeah, I mean Kevin Samuels was a polarizing figure and very controversial, and the response that we've seen to his death has been mixed, but there has been a noticeable element of um, celebration. We're seeing it on Twitter, Facebook, and we see a lot. It's a lot of hostility that I personally witnessed from women in particular, and many of those women have been characterizing it as that they just really aren't emotionally invested or they just don't care. But I think it presents itself as a little bit different than that. So I want to have an honest conversation. And right now, I want to have that conversation with the men because I think it's important that we share the perspectives of men, as considering that Kevin Samuels uh, kind of self proclaimed himself as a voice for black men. Now, what I want to do is I want to actually put some black men up so that we can hear their perspectives on relationships and on the impact that Kevin Samuels had in this social media sphere on relationships and what it means now that he has seen an untimely death. So I want to welcome uh, these brothers to the stage. I don't want to say it's a show, not a show yet. We're doing a live on my page right now. I don't know. We might do a show. We'll
Show is
think
coming.
about it. Yeah, show's coming. We
Yeah.
have brother DeAndre Miller, and we have brother Mike Jones. He's participated with us several times on some community town halls that we've done. Very intelligent young men, and I really look forward to having this conversation. So let's just start with the obvious question. What does the passing of Kevin Samuels mean for black relationships, at least in as it pertains to the discussions that we have on social media? What impact does it have on black relationships, if any at all? I'll start with you, DeAndre.
So I would say Kevin Samuels, he spoke very candidly about how he felt about relationships and black relationships. A lot of people would say it's harsh, and sometimes he was very harsh, but he speaks in the way that men speak to each other.
Mhm.
He speaks like that towards women also. So a lot of women got super offended because of that, because men generally don't speak the same way to women the way he speak to men. So when he spoke in that same way, they felt like he was being misogynistic. He was being whatever other negative term to describe him because he's speaking the same way that men speak to each other. The way I viewed it is I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said, but he also was very critical of men, and that's the one thing they didn't notice because he went viral for being critical towards women. And I believe he went viral being critical towards women because a lot of a lot of men, they shared his opinion because they wanted to say some of those things to women because they've been hurt in the past. And the other reason he went viral is because people don't talk about women that way. Women are more coddled. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. He spoke very candidly about how he felt about relations between men and women.
Okay, so basically, you're saying that he basically gave women the same treatment that he was giving the men that he was speaking to. So could that possibly amount to maybe just like a communication problem? I mean, a lot of people said that he specifically targeted black women in his rhetoric. Now, we know he was very harsh,
Mhm.
but what would you say to that?
Yeah, so it's not true he targeted specifically women or black women specifically. I remember watching one of his clips where a dude that was short, fat, didn't make much money. He told the dude, "Hey, you can't think that you'll get a woman that's a 10 when you're short, fat, you're not swinging. So
Right.
you need to lower your standards." And that's exactly how he speaks towards women also.
Okay.
So I would see the issue if he only spoke to women like that, but he spoke to men like that as well. So it's, showing the same energy. And
Oh,
I'm a big proponent of that.
okay. All right. Appreciate that. Brother Mike. And I know
Peace,
you have a
peace,
lot.
brother.
Please, I know you have a lot to say about this, and the
Oh man.
interesting thing, and one of the reasons why I was happy to have you on here today to discuss this, is because you're a married man.
Yes,
You're a happily married man, and
yes.
I think you can provide certain insight that maybe a lot of other people may not have as it pertains to his perspective. Some of the things that he said as far as expectations, the realistic or unrealistic expectations that we had. And but I want to kind of pose the same question to you, um, about what it means for the state of our relationships with him passing, and also, um, how would you describe the response to his passing, and if you could elaborate just a little bit on that.
Okay, so what I've noticed as I try to keep a pulse on our community. Even though I'm married, I still try to keep a pulse on our community via social media and just speaking to people in general. But social media, it really tells you a lot. It really is revealing in terms of the back and forth, the exchange that you see a lot on different topics. But I think what I've noticed over the years is that the pendulum has been going too far to the left or right, depending on how you want to look at it. It's been going way too far in terms of on the woman's behalf in this relationship aspect. We've gotten to a point, in my opinion, where women have become a sort of infallible in terms of being able to criticize and correct. So I think Kevin Samuels, what the information that he came with and the way he brought it, albeit harsh or not, he provided some balanced perspectives in terms of our position on this earth or in society, and how there needs to be more of a balance when it comes to the respect and relationship aspect of men to women. And I understand women. There's been a past of certain things that needed to be corrected, but there seems to that there's been an overcorrection, if
Right.
you will. And I think Kevin Samuels was that person, kind of bringing it back to center, or more to center, if you will. And I think that the pushback has revealed a dark place, or a dark road that we're heading down in terms of the collective, the Black woman collective. Let me say that, because as I indicated earlier, there's almost a God complex that, and I won't even say almost. There seems to be a God complex that's developed within a lot of our women, and I don't speak in absolutes because I know nothing is 100%. But a lot of what I see, anytime a woman is corrected in any kind
Hmm.
of way, whether it's Lizzo with her whole behind out at a game in front of kids, whether it's somebody portraying the slut walk, it doesn't matter. You will
Hmm.
always see women defended with
Hmm.
a gender allegiance, if you will, and
Hmm.
that's not cool. And I don't see that as amongst men. You see some dudes with it, but on the most part, men will correct men, and men will
Right.
call out men for being wrong. But now when I see women do some degenerate or or unethical stuff, it doesn't matter what it is. Women will support it just on the basis of gender allegiance. And that is a dark road we're heading down. And I've never seen black women respond this way with such callous, such inhumanity. That's just not our nature. And
That's right.
seeing this is quite disturbing, brother. It's just quite disturbing, because that means we've lost our universal connection and who we were and that natural empathy that we once had. And we seem to be losing that. Well, at least as it pertains to the counterpart, which is the black male, we seem to have lost the compassion for our counterparts. And that's a disturbing trend that I'm noticing. And I'm just hoping that at some point we can both on both sides understand the agenda and the game that's being played with us. And come up with some remedies or some at least start some conversation where we can begin to right the ship and bring this thing back to center.
Well, there were two things that I really liked that you were talking about. One was the imbalance, and the other was correction. Now, I personally have a question when it comes to correction, and I love black women, but let's just ask a real question here. When is it ever okay to offer correction to a black woman? Like what is the situation where it is appropriate, where it is deemed appropriate to offer correction to a black woman? Because black men don't know. And apparently it seems like other black women don't know either. I've spoken to a lot of black women who stand on the other side of this, who are not elated at the death of Kevin Samuels, which I still find is crazy. And, a lot of those women are really worried about the state of our community. And, you cannot be a person that is averse to correction, because you will never learn, you will never grow. And as far as the imbalance aspect of this, you're 100% right. I mean, whenever the male perspective has been offered, whether it be in mainstream media or just on social media, podcasts, anything popular that ever offered anything pertaining to male perspective, it's always been offered by women. I don't know if people pay attention to that. Whenever there was any type of advice on men and how to get a man and get a good man and this and that in relationships, it's women that have always been giving that advice. And even today, after the death of Kevin Samuels, I'm watching, let me tell you something. I'm watching a lot of these female podcasters, these social media, gossip people, like the what's the woman's name? I don't know the names, but one is like something TKO something. Like I'm seeing these women like, honey, the T. Oh, he died alone, and like everybody's making a real joke out of this. Like it's poetic. It's beautiful that this man died. This is not our nature. This is not the type of behavior or attitude that is native to us as African people. It is not, and it's worrisome. And as see, you're a married man, right? DeAndre, do you have kids?
No, I don't.
So you're a young black man. I'm not married. I may not be that young, but I have kids. So we have legitimate concerns about the future, whether it be for marriage, relationships, our children. We have legitimate concerns in our relationships with each other as black men. And I believe those perspectives that we share are necessary. However, it has always been presented that our opinions don't matter. And Kevin Samuels, he changed that dynamic. Whether we agreed with him or not, no one can argue that that man set forth a platform for black men to be heard. And I think that was one of the most poignant things about this. It's not about, I mean, was he harsh? Yeah, he was really harsh. I mean, I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff the brother said.
Right.
And I didn't agree with the delivery many times as well. But I did also see him offer that same harsh delivery to men.
Yeah.
but there was no outrage when he was talking to men that way.
Right, exactly. And it's so sad that uh, and we've totally lost emotional and just emotional maturity in terms of having disagreements. Now, so many people, or you find it on social media, most people believe that if you disagree with them, that equates to hate.
Yes.
I hate you if you disagree with me. We can respectfully disagree with each other and still not have to hate each other. But for
Amen.
whatever reason, that intelligence seems to be lost nowadays. If you disagree with somebody, I mean, Samuels was basically talking about relationship issues. So
Right.
think about how deep this is. We have a group, we have a large portion of our women literally celebrating someone's death based on a disagreement about relationships. Is that serious? Now they want to say he was being hateful to black women, but I am, in my perspective, in terms of what I seen and what I heard, that's a misinterpretation,
Right.
because number one, these women call for relationship advice. He spoke with them to understand their circumstances and situation. He made an assessment based on those circumstances and situations
Right.
about that particular woman. Now, whether if he used generalizations a lot, I don't know. I didn't watch him enough to hear if in fact he did that. But the episodes that I did see, he was speaking specifically to a certain woman that he assessed based on her situation. So I'm not getting the point of how he was preaching hate towards black women. And then when you ask someone, well, what do you base that on? How do you base that?
Right.
There's no specific answer to it. So this whole thing about I don't see that, and I disagree. And I think a lot of women are just using that to mask their emotional maturity, as I mentioned earlier, and to express that hatred they develop based on that emotional immaturity.
Mm. Mm.
Something that I find very troubling is in a lot of these spaces, the male space and the female spaces, there's a lot of toxic ideas that's expressed. But in the male spaces, something that's never expressed or condoned, except maybe in the not in the non-mainstream group like incels, involuntary celibates, who no one really likes. That's no one ever condones violence towards the opposite sex. That's never happened. That's never condoned in male groups. In the female groups, that's constantly celebrated. There was a story, I believe, on this talk show of a woman who chopped her husband's dick off because he cheated, and they spoke about it on this show called The Talk, and they were celebrating, they were cheering, and
Wow.
some of the women asked, "Oh, why did it happen? He cheated. Oh, so it's okay." And then one woman tried to push back and say, like, "Oh, it's not okay." And what if someone said that our breast should be chopped off? And he said, "Oh, it's just with a man, it's just something that's like flapping around. It doesn't really matter." Those
Wow.
type of views
Wow.
are expressed in male spaces, but in female spaces, it's constantly said. I've
Wow.
heard so many women say things like, "Oh, I chop a man's dick off." That's something that's crazy to me and always bothers me when I've heard it. Even women that I've dated have said things like that. I'm like, it always takes me for a pause every single time, because that's not something that's cool to say. So while toxic views are expressed within the male spaces and the female spaces, the male spaces never express violence towards women. And if it ever is expressed, or if a man does commit those violent acts, they go to prison. No one asks, why did you do this? They assault that dude. That's the difference between male and female spaces. Women, they celebrate, they cheer it on. There's women sending the woman who chopped the man's dick off. There are women that were sending her care packages. No man
Wow.
would ever a woman that assaulted a woman.
Mm-mm.
None.
No, no. And let me say this, Tony. Also, you find that we can talk about men and our issues and not have to use the what about women argument. But every single time you speak about women in terms of the accountability or anything that needs correcting, it's the what
deflected.
about argument that's always presented by some women at some point. You're going to get what about the men. We're talking about women at this point. Can we just speak about the issues with women? And we haven't been able to do that. We haven't been able to have that conversation. It always turned into a what about men conversation. And as far as me, and I've seen plenty of men, I don't have any problem taking accountability or correcting men. In fact, I've went in on plenty of guys who have been misogynistic or attacked women. I went to Tommy Sotomayor's page and went in on him years ago. This is 5, 6, 7 years ago. Went in on that dude, and I've gone in on several dudes because I'm about universal justice and universal balance.
That's
People know right and wrong, no matter who it comes from, no matter what gender. Right and wrong, you know it. But now we're at a point where people, especially, and I say specifically women, will excuse it based on gender allegiance. And that is a troubling issue. And we're at a troubling time with that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I agree. I agree 100%. You know, and another thing that's so interesting is that I mean, and I don't want to misrepresent this, like you know, all women are like that, because
No, absolutely
that's
not.
just not what it is. You know,
Absolutely not.
but there's like growing concern just from my conversations with women that, you know, they're really worried about where things are going, and it's crazy. You know, you've had female friends who always say, you know, I don't have female friends, I don't have woman friends, I'm not around women, you know.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it's like men, I don't know, maybe men are just simpler, you know, when it comes to even when it comes to things like correction and accountability. But let me ask you, as far as today's women being so averse to correction, why has anyone ever thought about why it has led to this state? Why you cannot really criticize a woman without it being seen as an attack or misogynistic? Like, what is the root cause, and how can we get through to our women to explain to them that correction does not mean hatred? It doesn't mean we're angry. It doesn't mean we hate you. It actually, quite often, correction means that someone cares enough to tell you what you're doing wrong.
Right. Absolutely. I think one of there's a number of reasons how we got here. Uh, Definitely the sins of the past that were that we that we're attempting to heal. As I said earlier, seems to be being overcorrected, and I think that attempt to heal and that babying during that healing stage, combined with the feminism or the feminist movement. Let me say that the
Right.
feminist movement is an extremist movement, in my point. But you combine that with society's recognition of women have had these challenges. Let's correct this, and let's begin to put a spotlight on it and make laws. And I think it's natural when people are, I guess, for a lack of a better term, like babied or spoiled, they're going to
Right.
develop a certain entitlement or complex based on how they're being babied or treated. And I
Right.
think to an extent now, Black women specifically, I mean, let's look at what's going on in terms of what we see now. You know, we got a black, what is the Biden administration doing? We got a black Supreme Court justice. He
Yeah.
made a black woman his
Vice president.
vice
Now you
president.
got a
He
black
made
woman,
he,
press secretary,
exactly,
LGBT. Yeah.
everything is focused on the black
Black women.
woman. And even in TV now, you just see the black man nowhere.
Yeah.
And I'm conscious of it. And if you pay attention, the black man is not in is rarely, you rarely see the heterosexual black male
Come on.
in sitcoms, commercials,
That's right.
you name it. The
You rarely even
heterosexual
see
black
black
male.
couples anymore on
Exactly,
television.
exactly. Whenever you see a black male on TV, either he's LGBT or very effeminate. Let me say that.
Right.
You hardly ever see a strong black male image on TV nowadays. Pay
True.
attention to it. So in anything, like even in the government or whatever you see, black men are not being, all of a sudden we are not qualified for those jobs anymore, I guess. So
Right.
only thing now you see is the black woman being promoted. And I see it's an agenda, whether people want to believe it or not. I see it's an agenda because now you keep promoting that woman where she feels her man is irrelevant. And now you
Exactly.
have even somebody coming out in national media saying, you know, the black man, you don't need him. You need you a white man.
Yes.
Basically, that's what they're saying.
There are articles that are literally being written that say just that are published in articles. And
Yeah.
if we're going to be real, if we're going to be honest about it, I mean, black women have been propped up uh, ahead of black men, and you know, to be the breadwinners, the head of households. I mean, this has been we know this has been a white supremacist agenda in this country for a long time.
Sure.
And
Yes.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead and finish. I was just agreeing with you.
Oh no, I think it's, when you see so many gifts, so much symbolism, so much praise being given to black women all the time, black girl magic, everything's black woman, first black woman, this, you notice there's never any mention of black men. And if there's a black woman that's promoted to some prominent position of symbolism, rarely does she have a black husband. I still can't even think if any of them even have a black husband. I don't think I've even been able to find that yet. So black men are being erased from the conversation. Before we were the main topic of the conversation as it pertained to painting us a certain way. When it came to propagandizing us as violent, as sexual predators, and everything wrong with society and relationships. But today, we're not even mentioned anymore. We're not relevant. We're not relevant enough to have our own opinions. We're not relevant enough to head our households, to even be considered as a partner for our women. Because, like you said earlier, I mean, you have black people writing articles saying why black women need to get with white men and not marry down. That's literally the language that's used. So what does that do to the psyche of black women, who are the most educated people in this country, but also in the heaviest debt? Don't forget that part. But when you ensure that systems are in place that 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 keep black women more educated, more financially stable and enriched than black men, and then you tell them that they don't need black men, what do you expect to happen? And at what point do you think black women are just going to stop and say, hey, yeah, man, I want to hear what that guy has to say? Why? Everything is telling them that you ain't shit. At what point do you think black women are just going to stop and say, hey, yeah, man, is there an echo? I think there was an echo for me.
There's an echo real quick, yeah. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Tony. And something else that I think I think another reason for what's going on is part of it's an overcorrection. So in the past, women couldn't vote. They weren't really allowed to drive. They weren't allowed to own a bank account. And domestic violence wasn't taken seriously for a while. And black women experienced those things also. Really allowed to drive. They weren't. Oh, the echo's on again. Yeah, they experienced those things to a worse degree. So now the overcorrection is, saying women can never do wrong, everything, putting women in positions of power, and anything you say to correct them, it means that you're sexist, you're misogynist, you're hating on women, and it's an attempt to silence people who are trying to point out anything that's done wrong. And I also think another issue are simps. So people that they're going to say women, the men, in order to try to get with women, trying to say that they do nothing wrong, that they're queen, and they would pretty much drink their bath water. So I think those two things are major issues to as to why people look at as wrong if you correct a woman.
Right. Well, and yeah, I mean, we've reached a stage where women, a lot of our women are not willing to hear any sort of correction or advice unless it's accompanied by praise. And Kevin Samuels, he kicked in the door and he just said, "Nah, it ain't going like that." and and I think that was the most shocking part, that he gave women the same business that he gave men. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go, Mike. Yeah, Mike is setting up for
Yeah.
on the laptop. So I
Okay.
think, yeah, because he has a poor connection on his phone. Now, I think one of the things that Kevin Samuels did that really got under people's skin was that he pointed out the unrealistic expectations of women and men in comparison to their reality, right? And and another thing that a lot of people don't talk about is that most of these people that he was giving advice to, and you're saying he was being so mean and horrible to, they were calling in to his show for advice, and they were feeding him the same information that he was using to make his assessment. You got to remember, one of the questions he always asked was what do you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? And with that famous viral video that made him, go all over the place, you know, it was that actually the woman who rated herself average, you know, and so he took the ball and ran with it, as compared, in regard to the things that she was saying. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm excusing it, because he was mean in the things that he said, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's fair for us to paint it as exclusively a hatred for black women. I
Right.
wouldn't say that, especially when his mission statement is that he wants to bring black men and black women together. And I also think that a lot of people, they drew their opinions on Kevin Samuels based upon the viral clips, based upon the sound bites. And how many people actually sat there and listened to the 1, 2, and 3 hour lives that he was doing, where he was having multiple full conversations with people? Because, I was intrigued. A lot of the stuff I was seeing, I was like, damn, this guy's a jerk. Why are so many people even following this dude? But I chose to watch a few of his lives, and I went into it, like, yeah, I don't like this dude. I'm gonna get at him. But then when I listened to it, I was like, oh, see, that was my response. My response was, oh, I get it. I understand, and I understand how clickbait works. I understand how these algorithms work, and entertainment to get more views. I mean, we can't ignore that aspect of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what that's what
Yeah.
became his bread and butter. Nobody was
Yeah.
studying Kevin Samuels when he was talking that shit to men.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Can y'all
But
hear me?
yes, oh,
Yeah.
you hear you good
Okay,
now.
I'm just making sure.
Yeah,
But to your point, he had a marketing angle.
right.
Kevin Samuels was the men's Derek Jackson, right?
Yes.
He was the men's Derek Jackson. You had an allegiance to Derek Jackson with women, because he was going in and telling men about their behind. Now, granted, he wasn't as harsh and as and as just like I say, he wasn't as harsh as Kevin Samuels, but
Right.
he was basically telling men about themselves, and how they were messing up and needed certain correction. But Kevin Samuels is that same marketing man.
Yes.
you know?
Yes. But here's an interesting thing. If Derek Jackson had died, you wouldn't have seen black men all over the place like, yeah, good for that mother effer. Yeah, he's dead. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't I don't think that you would see something like that.
I don't think so
Yeah.
either. You may have seen, I mean,
maybe from some more
You
feminine
know, you
type
may
of
have
dudes,
seen
but
some of it, but I definitely don't think you would have seen the amount
the
of
level that we're seeing,
celebration
yeah,
that we're seeing with um, brother, gosh,
Samuels.
Brandon. Yeah, brother Samuel.
Yeah.
You know, we're not, we wouldn't see that. I don't believe.
And I think we've become so disconnected to who we are, from who we are as
Yes,
a people,
yes, yes,
because in one hand, and we don't see the hypocrisy in our own rhetoric that we're flooding the place with. Like, on one
yes.
hand, you have so many black women that stand by, protect black women,
Thank
but no
you.
one is considering Kevin Samuels' black mother, who found out about her son's death on
Yes,
social media, largely from a bunch of women who now continue to make light of his death, to ridicule his death, and to celebrate it. What about protecting her, the most sacred entity in the black community, a black mother, an elder?
yes,
What about
yes.
that?
And that's
Point.
not
Great
the
point.
only point. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's not the only point of hypocrisy. You're asking for protection from the same men that you're tearing down.
Come on.
You're tearing down the black man, but you expect protection from the black man. I don't.
Oh.
That doesn't. That doesn't make sense to me.
Mm.
If you want protection or you expect protection, there has to be some reciprocation. You know, there has to be some support on your end too. You just can't,
Correct.
crap on somebody and expect, that person to have allegiance and want to love and protect you. That it doesn't work like that. So there has to be some better education, better understanding, and just more order to our collective and our society if we're going to get this thing back on point. Because I'm telling you, man, we're on a dark road right now in terms of
Yeah,
black people and black relationships.
that's right. You were saying, DeAndre? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't remember what I was saying, but something that I feel is a major issue between with many people in general is there's such polarization that no one actually takes time. It's piggybacking off of your point actually when you said you want to watch Kevin Samuels to see what he is about. No one takes time to watch things or views that they don't agree with. And
Right.
why
Yes,
find why
yes,
find things out I don't agree with? And because I want to see if there's any common ground, or at the very least, I want to learn how to debate against it. You can't, have a proper debate unless you know what the other side's saying.
right, right.
But what I find is when I'm watching viewpoints I don't agree with, I find a lot that I do agree with, and I see that the opposite sides agree on much more than is put out there.
Yes.
So if
Yes.
people aren't watching sides that the viewpoints of those that they agree with, they'd never know these things, and they're just going to fight and argue all the time. This will be more division, especially amongst black men and black women.
Yeah, but another thing is that people just can't compromise at all. Like, this society today, especially via social media, teaches us that we know everything. That
Yes,
no
yeah,
one can teach
yeah.
us anything,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that whatever we deem our reality is whatever it's going to be. Hence, you
Yeah,
hear statements, you hear that that terminology, my
my truth.
truth. I
Yes,
hate hearing that bullshit.
I hate that. And it's funny you said that. I was just about to comment on that.
Go
That
ahead.
nobody really wants truth. And this goes for men and women. I'm not just talking about the women now.
Come on
I'm
now.
talking about men and women. And it speaks to that emotional immaturity I was talking about. Everybody just wants their truth. You
Yes.
don't have a truth. You don't own the truth. The truth is a universal principle. There's no
Yeah,
ownership of it. Either you respect what's truth universally,
Come on.
or you're making up something. You're living in a delusional reality. There
Right.
is no your truth. You
But but listen to what you said. You're living in a delusional reality. We're trapped in a virtual reality where the engine is social media. That's why it's important. Listen, people don't realize the power and the value of social media today. People don't understand how social media is literally being used to infiltrate governments. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? So just imagine what they're doing to your mind through the propaganda, through all of this imagery that they're sending us, through all of these. Listen, the bots, and bots are a real thing. I came to learn that. When the trolls, a lot
Yeah.
of the things that you see on social media are not representative of the real world. Let me say that again. A lot of the things that you see and hear that you're reading on social media are not representative of what's happening in the real world. That's something we need to consider, because that's a very easy way to manipulate people and to program them. You understand what I'm saying? I've watched the algorithms change over the past 2 years, especially with the onset of COVID and the response to it. I've seen how the propaganda machine works, and I see how it's used to get people to be disheartened and discouraged and frustrated, and then just give up because you feel there's no hope left in the world. So if there's anything that I can impart to anyone that's watching here and to you brothers here, is don't lose hope, because it's not everything that it seems. It is not. And I
Good point.
I can tell you
Good
that
point.
because I speak to people. I still engage with people. I talk to people in the real world
Good point.
outside of social media, which is a very toxic space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Very good
think.
point.
Go
Let
ahead.
me let me just
Yeah,
say this
I
real
agree.
quick. Let me just say this real quick, brother Tony. I'm going to try to tune back in on my phone because I gotta go pick up mom, but I want to stay on the
Okay.
call.
Well, we
So
only
I'm
have
going to
about
try.
5 more minutes anyway, because
Okay.
this is not going to be a long one. So,
Okay.
um,
So I'm just going to try to reconnect from my phone.
okay, cool,
My
cool,
last part. Okay.
no problem, brother. Okay,
All
go
right.
ahead,
Thanks.
DeAndre.
I completely lost my thought.
I'm so sorry. I was talking about social media and how it's detached from the real world. From what's really happening out here.
I agree with that 100% because I feel social media. When I grew up, even though I'm not super, I'm relatively young. I'm 28. When I grew up, social media wasn't really a thing. It didn't really people didn't care about it as much until I was in college.
Right.
So people behave a certain way on social media that they would never behave in real life. And the first, it was so crazy to me how once social media became a thing, how there became so many internet gangsters. I'm like, whoa, everybody's tough now. I know you in
That's
real life.
true.
You're not like that.
Right.
And it's not just that with men. It's like that with women also. Um, so
Facts.
I don't have issues in my dating life, right? But if you go online, you'll see women say, "Oh, I want someone that's 6'3", that makes this amount of money, that is, I don't know. I'm 5'10". I make a decent amount of money. I'm not rich, but I haven't had issues with my dating life because the things that they say online is not things that they mean. You can't actually build meaningful connections online. In person, your personality is going to matter, how you speak, how you carry
Eye
yourself,
contact, all of that. That's right.
but that's not possible online.
That's right. Not at all. And when we talk about those realistic expectations, I mean, a lot of the women. Listen, I know women who are 5 feet tall, portly. I'll say, not the in the greatest shape, but they have requirements for men that are athletic, six
Uh-huh.
two and better. They got to be making this amount of money, and you work at Popeyes, so Kevin Samuels like literally hit you. He picked up a mirror and he put it in front of you and said, "Listen, this is what you are, and this is what you're saying you want. They don't match." And he just basically he was telling people that maybe you should lower your expectations as it pertains to your reality. But I think, unfortunately, with a lot of our women and a lot of people in general today, our egos are much bigger than our reality. And that's the
Definitely.
problem. And that's often propagated by what you see on social media. I put up a post. I think it was a couple days ago, 2 days ago, or something like that. And I was really kind of just pouring out how I feel about this. It wasn't like a biased sort of post in any way at all. It wasn't pro Kevin Samuels. It wasn't against Kevin Samuels. It was just my perspective as it pertained to our relationships. And in that post, I said, well, at the end of the day, black people are trapped in it's this recurrent cycle of trauma. And whether we like it or not, black women, you need black men, and black men, you need black women. And the response to that post was fairly hostile. I had black women in the comment section telling, black women don't need black men. Like, bruh, that broke my heart, because I think every other community understands why they need each other, why they need their counterparts to thrive and build their communities and their families. But you have black women proudly professing that they do not need black men here in 2022, with the state that black people are in this country right now. You still have black women proudly professing that we don't need black men. As we are facing the great reset, which is upon us, as we are facing food shortages. So you tell me, when the purge comes, when people start breaking into your house to steal food and all that, who's going to protect you if you don't need black men? Who's gonna be there for you? You want black girl magic them to death? You got to be more realistic in what you're saying. Are you going to yell at them to death?
Yes.
Black women, you need black men. Plain and simple. Face that reality. But for the women who do know that, listen, you're a special kind of wonderful. And trust me, there are many men out there who appreciate you. And for the women out there who have these expectations, these really elevated expectations, even though you know what this society does as far as targeting black people for dysfunction in their relationships, perhaps what you're looking for is just a white man with a black face. So sometimes you guys got to think about what it is that you're demanding from black men. And maybe you're just hoping for something that you may even feel is something that you can't attain. So I really want people to start being more realistic, because the truth of the matter is the expectations that so many of us have, men and women, in our partner, we discount 90% of the good people out here who probably could meet those expectations, searching for that 10%. So y'all want that top 10% when you're in the bottom 10%. That's basically what Kevin Samuels was telling you. He didn't sugarcoat it. He said things. Listen, my mother, before she died, one thing about my mother, she was very blunt. She was abrasive. But there's one thing I always said about my mother. She may not tell you what you want to hear, but she's always going to tell you what you need to hear. So perhaps people can appreciate Kevin Samuels for what he brought to the table, even if it didn't taste so good for you, even if it wasn't particularly, your cup of tea or your favorite sort of meal. At least he set a table for the conversation. He set a table for the dialogue. And he set that table where more than just women were allowed to participate in the conversation. And the thing that worries me today, which will be the final thing that I say about this, the thing that worries me today is that, as I said before, Kevin Samuels created a space. We can't deny it. He kicked in the door and just created a platform for men to be heard. He created a platform where women would call in regularly, interested in what men want and they need. Remember that. He had an audience. They were supporting him. It was women that was calling in like crazy. Y'all were calling him asking for advice on what to do to get with a man, to achieve marriage, How can I find my husband? So obviously there was a desire to learn what it is that black men want. But you cannot find that out unless you're willing to listen to black men. Stop telling us our opinions. Stop telling us your interpretation of what we're saying to you candidly and directly. And stop viewing words, candid words, as violence. That's one of the most ridiculous things that we've adopted from white liberalism is calling words violence. And I think that's part of the justification that you use to celebrate this man's death, because you took personal what that man said. That man did not rape nobody. He didn't molest nobody's kids. He didn't go out, bust no old lady over the head and steal her purse. But yet, y'all are the biggest consumers of Jerry Springer, Maury Povich, all the Love and Hip Hop, and all of these trash ghetto depictions and caricatures of black people. You're the ones out there supporting these rappers that's telling people to shoot niggas. They telling people that you're telling your kids to take drugs. They telling dudes to screw as many holes as possible. But y'all happy that Kevin Samuels is dead when that man said he wants black women and black men to get together to be married? I think our priorities are out of whack, and somebody needs to get it together. Are you able to hear
drop
me?
the mic, brother.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
Deandre, drop the mic, brother, on that, man. You said 3 mouthful, man, and I'll just say one thing to one point you made that I've always talked about, and that's in terms of this whole we don't need the black man thing that you hear spewed sometimes, which is utterly ridiculous. Who do you think that's keeping you safe in this society, whether you want to acknowledge it or not? Do you think if anything happens that the white man is going to protect you? Do you really believe that? And marketing is just amazing, because I watched the confirmation hearings of the Supreme Court justice. I watched those white men in that confirmation hearing try to rip that lady apart, literally rip that sister apart, right? But then that one white husband that she has, that's what they're praising that. When all the other white men around there are you can see the overt racist atmosphere, but they can excuse all of that and say, oh, look how great this white man is treating her. You know what I'm saying? So it's just amazing to me that we just don't have the consciousness or just the intellectual awakeness or maturity, or whatever you want to call it. They put us to sleep, man. I just don't know what to say about it. I'm like, are y'all seeing this? Are y'all looking at this?
Yeah.
But I'm as we probably feel sometimes. Well, you feel like you're in the twilight zone, and you're the only one that's seeing this.
Yeah.
But man, we got to do better. We got to do better. We used to be on it, but now, man, they really marketed this delusional thought to us, man. And you said it all, man. And I'm hoping at some point, we can figure this out together. Because we do need each other.
You know what's interesting? I believe that black women have been convinced to get rid of their own protection, which is black men.
Yes.
And
yes.
And the crazy thing about it is we've come to gauge our relationships through a very skewed lens. Well, gauging successful relationships, right? The way that we are in society, we gauge the value of our relationships based on what? Finances, based on money, right? And when you know that black men are intentionally relegated to a certain position in society that impacts their ability to provide for their families, sustain wealth, and even stay out of jail, what do you expect to happen? So I understand, there's a lot of black women, and I don't want to be offensive now, but I'm gonna just be real with it. I know there are a lot of black women. I said earlier that a lot of our black women just want a white man with a black face. And, you know, going back to, you know, slavery, civil rights, you know, when you see the success and the power, the authority of white men, right? And the respect that they get, you want that. You want to see that because you see how them white women are living good with their white men. You want that. But if you can't achieve that with your black man, you know, you get angry with him. You know what I'm saying? And it turns into a sense of vitriol and disgust. And it's kind of, you get kind of mad at him for not being able to do or be what that man over there is for his woman. And then you have white feminists coming and telling you that that black man ain't shit, and how men are, you know, they're doing this to us and men are horrible, yet they're happily at home with Bob, and they're going to their fertility clinics to make sure that they have as many kids as possible, and life is great. So I think it's a frustrating environment that is created for black women, where a lot of them feel stuck and they want success. They want what they perceive to be a successful relationship, but they can't seem to find it with black men. But we're confused about the root causes and why it is the way it is. But at the end of the day, black men and black women need to repair their relationships. And now I'll tell you another thing. This whole gender war narrative is something that is not native to African people. This whole gender divide, it never existed in our culture. So we've adopted so many ways of the enemy. We have, and we're kind of transforming into them, so where they don't even have to do the work of separating us, because we're now using all their talking points, and we're the mouthpieces for their own white supremacist agenda and rhetoric, and we don't see it. And all it does is serves to continue to break down black families. There's no other movement for civil rights that I know of that actually protects and tries to preserve the black family. So I think we need to start considering that, and look, and maybe black women, maybe those black men aren't so bad after all, and maybe we should focus on trying to listen to them and hear what they have to say, so we can, you know, figure this all out together. And I'll just kind of pass the mic to y'all. I know I was running my mouth. This is just an issue that really gets to me. But I will say this, you know, I send out prayers and well wishes for Kevin Samuel's family. You know, if there's one thing we can say about that brother, is that he made an impact. And to all of the men out there, I do want to put a call out, right? Because in the podcast, social media world, there's nobody left. There's nobody left. And I think that is being heavily celebrated by feminists, black feminists, whatever you want to call it, and the whole, you know, all of these women podcasters out there who hated him. And I don't want us to fall back into the same old thing that we were going through before, where black men were not being heard. And I believe that a lot of these black feminists are going to use Kevin Samuel's death to punch down extra hard on black men and stamp out any future possibility for anybody to dare to step forward and create a platform for black men's voices to be heard. So, you know, whoever it is, brothers, we need more voices, and not just the Kevin Samuels type voice, but we need more platforms where black men speak to relationship issues from a black male perspective. Because if there's one thing Kevin Samuels showed us, is that there are a lot of black women, a hell of a lot of black women out there